The autumn rain hammered against the cracked windows of the abandoned warehouse in Detroit's East Side. Marcus Webb sat with his back against the cold concrete wall. His German shepherd, Liberty, pressed close to his leg. The dog's warmth was one of the few comforts Marcus had left in this world. At 42 years old, Marcus looked older. 3 tours in Afghanistan had carved lines into his dark skin that shouldn't have been there yet. His left leg, the one with the titanium rod from knee to ankle, ached in the dampness. Liberty nudged his hand with her gray muzzle, and Marcus smiled despite everything. They've been on the streets for 8 months now. Ever since the factory closed and his landlord decided a disabled veteran's pension wasn't enough to cover the rent increase. Marcus didn't complain much. He'd seen worse in Kandahar. At least here, nobody was shooting at him. Liberty suddenly perked up, her ears rotating toward the warehouse entrance. Marcus tensed, reaching for the wooden stick he kept nearby. You learned to be careful when you had nothing left to lose. But it wasn't danger approaching. It was music. Through the sheets of rain, Marcus could see lights. Lots of them. A wedding venue stood across the crumbling lot, all glass walls and golden chandeliers. He'd watched them set it up over the past week, wondering what it must be like to have that kind of money, that kind of hope. The music swelled, some classical piece Marcus didn't know the name of. Through the rain-streaked windows, he could see people in expensive suits and glittering dresses. A world away from where he sat. Liberty whined softly. Marcus, I know, girl. I see it too. He pulled his threadbare army jacket tighter and tried to ignore the gnawing in his stomach. They'd shared a gas station sandwich that morning, splitting it 50-50 like always. Tomorrow he'd try the church on Jefferson Avenue again. Sometimes they had leftovers on Sundays. The music shifted. Marcus recognized this one. Here Comes the Bride. He found himself watching despite knowing he shouldn't. Weddings reminded him of what he'd lost. Sarah had left 2 years ago, tired of the nightmares, tired of the pain, tired of watching him fade. That's when he saw her. The bride appeared in the venue's main entrance, but something was wrong. Instead of walking down the aisle, she was in a wheelchair. A sleek, expensive-looking one, but a wheelchair nonetheless. Her white dress cascaded around her like water, and even from this distance, Marcus could see her dark skin glowing against the fabric. She was beautiful, and she was alone. No bridesmaids surrounded her. No father stood ready to wheel her down the aisle. She sat there, framed by the doorway, her shoulders straight but her hands trembling in her lap. Marcus watched a man in a tuxedo approach her. The groom, he assumed. But instead of taking her hand, the man was talking, gesturing. Even without hearing the words, Marcus recognized the body language. He'd seen it enough times. Rejection, contempt. The bride's head dropped. Liberty stood up, her tail rigid. Easy girl. But Marcus was watching too. The groom turned and walked away. Just walked away. The bride sat there, frozen, as whispers rippled through the crowd. Some guests started standing, uncomfortable, uncertain. Others pulled out phones. Nobody moved to help her. Marcus felt something hot and familiar rise in his chest. Anger. The same anger he'd felt watching his battle buddy bleed out because command decided his life wasn't worth the risk of extraction. The same anger he'd felt when the VA lost his paperwork for the 3rd time. The same anger that had nowhere to go except inward. The bride began wheeling herself backward, away from the crowd, away from the humiliation. But she was moving fast, panicked, and the venue's entrance had 3 shallow steps leading down to the parking area. Marcus saw it before it happened. No, he whispered. The wheelchair hit the first step at an angle. The bride lurched. Her hands grabbed for the wheels, but momentum had already taken over. The chair tipped, and she tumbled forward into the rain. Marcus was moving before he knew he'd decided to move. His bad leg screamed in protest, but he ignored it. Liberty matched his pace, her claws scrabbling on the wet pavement. They crossed the lot in seconds that felt like hours. The bride lay on the wet ground, her dress soaking up muddy water, her dark hair plastered to her face. She wasn't crying. She was just staring up at the rain like she'd run out of the ability to feel anything at all. Marcus dropped to his knees beside her, his hands hovering, uncertain. Ma'am? Ma'am? Can you hear me? Are you hurt? Her eyes focused on him slowly. Brown eyes. Deep and infinite and full of something that looked like the end of hope. She stared at Marcus like she was trying to remember what other human beings looked like. Her lips moved but no sound came out at first. Liberty moved closer, sniffing gently at her hand, and something in the bride's expression cracked. I'm okay, she finally whispered. Her voice was hoarse. I'm not hurt, but she was. Marcus could see it. Not her body maybe, but everything else. Let me help you up, ma'am. He reached for her arms but stopped when he saw people emerging from the venue. A woman in a tight silver dress was recording on her phone. Two men in suits stood at the top of the steps, watching like they were observing a car accident, morbidly curious but unwilling to get involved. The bride saw them too. Her jaw tightened. Don't touch me. Just go. Marcus had heard that tone before. Pride. The kind that was the only thing keeping a person together. He understood it better than most. Ma'am, you're soaking wet and it's 40 degrees out here. At least let me get you somewhere dry. Why? Her eyes flashed. So you can post it online too? So you can tell everyone you helped the pathetic crippled bride who got dumped at the altar? The words came out like weapons, sharp and meant to cut. But Marcus had been cut by worse. I don't have a phone, he said simply, and I've got no interest in your business. I just saw someone who needed help. Her expression shifted. She looked at him, really looked at him for the first time, taking in his worn jacket with the 101st Airborne patch still sewn on the shoulder. His weathered face, his hands calloused and scarred. Liberty sitting patiently beside him, rainwater dripping from her fur. You're homeless. It wasn't a question. Marcus didn't bother denying it. Yes, ma'am. Something changed in her eyes. Not pity exactly. Something more complicated. She glanced back at the venue where guests were now filing out, some leaving entirely, others clustering under the awning with their phones raised. His name is Preston, she said suddenly. Preston Whitmore III. We've been engaged for 2 years. He proposed at his family's estate in the Hamptons. Made this whole speech about how I was his soulmate, how nothing would ever change that. She laughed, but it was a sound without any joy in it. Then 6 months ago I was in a car accident. Drunk driver ran a red light on Woodward Avenue. I woke up in Henry Ford Hospital with a severed spine. The doctors said I'd never walk again. Marcus stayed quiet, letting her talk. Preston visited twice. Then his mother started calling instead, suggesting we postpone, suggesting maybe I needed time to adjust. What she really meant was that a Whitmore doesn't marry someone in a wheelchair. Not good for the family image. But I thought if I showed up today, if I proved I was still me, still the woman he fell in love with. Her voice broke. I was so stupid. Marcus shook his head firmly. You weren't stupid. You were brave. There's a difference. The bride looked at him like she didn't believe such a thing as bravery existed anymore. Behind them, a voice called out sharp and cold. Olivia Hartwell, get back here right now. You're making a scene. A woman in her 60s stood at the venue entrance, dripping with diamonds and disdain. Her face was pulled tight from what Marcus guessed was expensive surgery, and her eyes held the kind of cruelty that came from never having been told no. Mrs. Whitmore, Olivia said quietly. The older woman descended the steps carefully, her heels clicking on the wet stone. She didn't look at Marcus or Liberty. To her, they probably didn't exist. This is embarrassing enough without you rolling around in the mud like some kind of... She waved her hand dismissively. Preston made his position clear. You need to accept it with dignity. Dignity? Olivia's voice rose. He left me at the altar, in front of 300 people. You gave him no choice. Mrs. Whitmore's tone was ice. The Whitmore name means something in this city. We have standards, expectations. Surely you understand that a marriage is about more than just feelings. It's about image, about legacy, about what you can contribute to the family. She finally glanced at Marcus, her lip curling. Case in point. Look at the company you're keeping now. Homeless veterans and stray dogs. This is exactly why Preston realized his mistake. Something inside Marcus snapped. He'd stayed quiet through a lot in his life. Taken orders from men he didn't respect. Swallowed his pride when nurses talked to him like he was stupid. Let people look through him on the street like he was invisible. But this woman standing here, kicking someone when they were already broken? That he couldn't abide. "Ma'am," he said, his voice steady and strong. The same voice he'd used to command his unit under fire. "I've seen a lot of ugly things in my life. Seen people blown apart. Seen villages burned. Seen men torture prisoners because they could. But I've never seen anything quite as ugly as what you're doing right now to someone who's supposed to be family." Mrs. Whitmore's eyes widened in shock that someone like him would dare speak to her. Marcus continued, "Your son walked away from a woman who loved him enough to show up here despite everything. That makes him a coward. And you standing here defending it? That makes you something worse. If you're still here listening to this story, if you're rooting for Olivia like I am, take a second and subscribe to the channel. Because what happens next is going to change everything." Mrs. Whitmore's face turned crimson. She opened her mouth to respond, but Olivia spoke first. "He's right." Her voice was different now. Stronger. She wiped the rain from her face and looked directly at the older woman. "He's absolutely right. You and Preston are cowards. And I'm done pretending that's okay." She turned to Marcus. "Can you help me to my car? It's the black Mercedes in the front lot." Marcus nodded and carefully helped her back into the wheelchair that Liberty had been guarding. As he pushed her across the parking lot, guests parted like water. Their phones still raised, but their expressions shifting from mockery to uncertainty. Preston appeared at the venue door, his perfect hair now disheveled. He started down the steps. "Liv, wait. We should talk about this." Olivia didn't even turn around. "There's nothing to talk about, Preston. You made yourself clear. But the accident, it changed things. You have to understand my position." She stopped the wheelchair herself, spinning it around with surprising force. "My position? I'm the one in a wheelchair, Preston. I'm the one who spent 4 months in physical therapy learning how to do basic tasks again. I'm the one who had to rebuild my entire life. And you know what I learned? I learned exactly who gives a damn about me and who doesn't." She gestured to Marcus. "This man, this homeless veteran you probably wouldn't even look at on the street, showed me more kindness in 5 minutes than you've shown me in 6 months. That tells me everything I need to know about the mistake I almost made." Preston's face hardened. "You'll regret this. My family owns half of Detroit's commercial real estate. You think your little tech company will survive without our connections? Without our investment networks?" Olivia smiled for the first time since Marcus had seen her. It was a sharp smile, like a knife finally unsheathed. "Preston, I don't think you ever bothered to actually research what I do. My little tech company, as you call it, is Hard AI. We're valued at $3.2 billion. We just signed contracts with the Department of Defense and 4 Fortune 500 companies. I don't need your family's money. I never did." The color drained from Preston's face. Around them, guests began whispering, their phones now capturing his humiliation instead of hers. "I stayed with you because I loved you. Because I thought you loved me. But love doesn't abandon people when things get hard. Love doesn't calculate worth based on whether someone can walk." She turned back to Marcus. "Let's go." They left Preston standing there in the rain, surrounded by the wreckage of his own cruelty. Marcus pushed the wheelchair to the Mercedes, where a chauffeur in a black suit stood holding an umbrella, his expression carefully neutral. The chauffeur moved to help, but Olivia raised her hand. "It's okay, James. Marcus has it." Marcus helped her transfer from the wheelchair into the back seat of the Mercedes. Liberty sat nearby, watching carefully. Once Olivia was settled, she looked up at Marcus, and for the first time, he saw something other than pain in her eyes. "Thank you. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't been there." Marcus shrugged, uncomfortable with gratitude. Anyone would have done the same, but they didn't. Olivia's voice was firm. 300 people watched me fall, and only you moved. That means something." She reached into a small clutch that had somehow survived the chaos. "Please let me help you. A hotel room for tonight at least. Some food. Whatever you need. Marcus shook his head. I appreciate it, ma'am, but I didn't help you for a reward. I know you didn't. That's exactly why I want to do this. There was a long moment of silence. Rain drummed on the car's roof. Liberty whined softly, pressing against Marcus's leg. Olivia's expression changed, becoming thoughtful. You said you were in the 101st Airborne. What did you do? Communications specialist. Made sure units could talk to each other in hostile territory. She nodded slowly. My company is developing AI systems for military communications. Encrypted networks, real-time translation, battlefield coordination. We're always looking for people who understand how these systems actually work in the field, not just in theory. Ma'am, I've been homeless for 8 months. I don't think I'm what you're looking for. You stood up to one of the most powerful families in Detroit to defend someone you didn't know. You moved without hesitation when someone needed help. You have a combat background and real-world experience with the exact systems we're building. Olivia leaned forward slightly. Marcus, I think you're exactly what I'm looking for. He stared at her, unable to process what he was hearing. I'm offering you a job. Security consultant. $60,000 to start, with full benefits and housing assistance. You and Liberty. She looked at the German Shepherd. We're a dog-friendly office. Marcus felt his throat tighten. He'd learned not to hope for things. Hope hurt too much when it got taken away. Why? He managed to ask. You don't know me. I know enough. I know you have integrity. I know you have courage. I know you see people as people, not as useful or disposable. Olivia's voice softened. 6 months ago, I thought I knew who I could trust. I was wrong. Today, a stranger showed me what real character looks like. I'm not going to ignore that. She pulled out a business card and pressed it into his hand. Think about it. Come to this address Monday morning. 9 a.m. We'll talk details. Marcus looked down at the card. Heart AI Technologies. Olivia Hartwell, CEO and founder. 18 months later, Marcus stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows of Heart AI's new headquarters in downtown Detroit. The city sprawled below him, transformed by evening lights. Liberty lay on her custom dog bed near his desk, gray muzzle resting on her paws, content. His office was modest but comfortable. Photos lined one wall. His unit in Afghanistan the day he got Liberty from the shelter, and a new one from last month when Heart AI had won the Defense Innovation Award. In that photo, he stood beside Olivia, both of them holding the trophy, both of them smiling. The job had been real. Everything she promised had been real. Marcus now led a team of 12 veterans, all of them helping design and test communication systems that would save lives in combat zones. The work mattered. For the first time in years, he woke up feeling like he had purpose beyond just surviving. The housing assistance had gotten him and Liberty into a small apartment in Midtown. Nothing fancy, but it had heat, running water, and windows that didn't leak. Some nights he still woke up surprised to find himself in a real bed. His office door opened and Olivia wheeled in, carrying 2 cups of coffee. Burning the midnight oil again? Says the CEO who's here at 8 p.m. on a Friday. She grinned and handed him a cup. They'd developed an easy friendship over the months. She taught him about AI systems and business strategy. He taught her about resilience and trusting your instincts about people. The DoD contract got extended, she said. 3 more years. They specifically mentioned your team's input as a deciding factor. Marcus felt pride swell in his chest. We've got good people. We do. Olivia paused. I'm testifying before Congress next month. About veteran employment and accessibility in tech. I want you there with me. He raised an eyebrow. You sure? I'm not much for public speaking. Marcus, you told off Preston's mother in front of 300 people. Congress will be easy. They both laughed. Preston had tried to sue Olivia for breach of contract. The lawsuit had been dismissed within a week. Last Marcus heard, Preston was working for his father's company in a middle management position. His reputation in Detroit society thoroughly shattered. Olivia looked out at the city lights. You know, that was the worst day of my life. And somehow it became the beginning of the best chapter. Marcus understood exactly what she meant. Sometimes, he said quietly, the worst moments show you who you really are, and who really matters. Liberty stretched and patted over, resting her head on Olivia's lap. Olivia scratched behind the dog's ears. "Thank you," she said softly, "for everything." "Thank you," Marcus replied, "for seeing past the surface."